Welcome everybody to the first in a series of programs all about visual content marketing. This is a visual content marketing show hosted by me. My name is Krishna Day. You'll find me on Google Plus at Krishna Day Online, and we're going to be talking today all about using Google Hangouts. Really, that's very odd, isn't it? A Google Hangout about Google Hangouts. So if you are using hashtags, then I encourage you to use the hashtag Hangout Pioneers. And I'm thrilled that you're able to be with us here today. And let me introduce you to our guest. Our guest, I'm thrilled to say, the first person on this mini-series called Hangout Pioneers. Her name is Sarah Santacroce, and I've known Sarah for quite a number of years. We'll be turning over to her in just a moment, but one of the things that you'll actually find out about her is that she's very active in terms of all forms of digital communications, and she's a coach, she's a mentor, she's a trainer. And important for me here based in Europe was actually to find somebody who I think has been doing some really interesting work using Hangouts, but she's also in Europe. In fact, she's in Switzerland. And you'll be able to find out a little bit more about her as we get in through the show. So Sarah, thank you so much for actually joining us here today.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Krishna. Thanks so much for having me.
You know, this show came about actually partly inspired by yourself, Sarah, because I saw you on Google Plus, and you have recently been hosting a series of shows all about using Google Plus. In fact, that was the end summation. You did a summary of what you'd learnt. So I know you from the work that you do around LinkedIn and through blogging. In fact, many years ago, you invited me. Thank you very much for being a guest on your show of podcasts. And I thought I'd just want to kind of bring people onto this series of shows to learn about what have you learnt on this journey. And I have to admit, anybody who's listening, you all know me. I do lots of public speaking, I do podcasts, I've done webinars, I've been doing all of this stuff since 2005, and yet today I was a bit nervous. And I think you may have gone through some of that as well. So I thought, bring you on, let's have a look at what you've learned and how, you know, the people who are with us here today, be it watching or listening now or later on, actually can say this is what we've been able to learn from Sarah. So what gave you the idea, Sarah, for your business, which is simplicityadmins.ch is how we find you, and obviously very active here on Google+. But what gave you the inspiration to do a show of a series, given the fact that you've been using webinars and podcasts and many other tools to communicate and market your business online?
Well, it was kind of the same for me that happened to you, and I got more interested in Google Hangouts, and you know, I've seen them on various from various persons, and I thought, okay, I need to find out more about them, and I need to use this technology for myself and really figure out how this works. Because just like you, I do a lot of webinars, and I kind of noticed that you can do these Hangouts just like you do webinars. And I thought, wow, isn't that amazing that you can now add the visual, you know, the people can actually see you while you're doing these webinars. That's just amazing what that brings to a webinar. And so I got interested in that technology. I'd like to reference Denise Wakeman, who I look up to and kind of, you know, follow her. And so she started doing something on Google Hangouts, and I did a little training with her, and I thought, okay, I need to do this myself. And you said that you were nervous, and you know, you're doing public speaking and all that. I don't even do public speaking, so imagine for me what it meant to appear in front of camera. It was that big step for me. And but I don't know, sometime in November, I just thought, okay, I have to announce this series, otherwise I'll never do it. And so that's what I did. And so mid-November sometime, I announced a Learn and Play series. That's how I call it, Learn and Play with Sarah on Google Hangouts. And so the idea was really to learn and play together and figure out how this technology works. And I think it gave me that kind of a protection to say that it's learn and play. People knew that it was, kind of a new technology to me as well, that there's going to be mistakes. And I warned everybody, there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be technical glitches. And so it felt safer for me.
Well, I actually just got up on the screen here a screenshot from your blog post, and we'll refer to it again later on, and I'll put this also in the show notes to actually find it, because you did a really good wrap-up of the things that you learnt, and I really liked the fact that you had a little trailer at the beginning, and in fact I think I should have done that. So, if I miss things here, like I just missed the fact I've got a browser open and I was replaying, well, that's it, me learning live. And I know that I wasn't able to get something else to work properly for me today, and partly it's the technology and partly it's the confidence. But I do recommend that people take a look at that series, because you've got some great content amongst that series of Hangouts that you did, but I also liked the fact that you did a wrap-up at the end about the things that you learned. So really delighted that you're able to be with us here today to share some of those tips. And I think to some extent people are forgiving in terms of knowing that this is new technology, but I also know that many of us want to get the best production values that we can, be that with our audio or our video. And I know one of the things that stood out for me when I watched, and you've got a great room there, Sarah, that you're actually doing your Hangouts from, and you've got a lovely setting and good lighting. And I know it's probably dark where you are now, it's going dark here now, and so that's sometimes a bit of a challenge, isn't it, in terms of those of us who are working in environments where it's not so easy for us to control things. Perhaps you can tell us about some of those things that you got set up with at the beginning around how you set up your room and what you learned through that journey of the number of weeks of doing those Hangouts, and what does that mean for going forward? Are there things that you're changing or investing in, particularly around getting your camera set up and the lighting, because there's some shows that might be very good but you can't see the people in them.
Yeah, no, it's true. People are forgiving, but only with certain things, like technology, little things where we don't know what's happening. But when it comes to watching a video, and if you can't see the person or you can only see a shadow, I don't think people will watch through the end. So I think it's very important that you have good lighting. Mark Vang, who I also look up to in terms of Hangouts, he actually told me that the lighting is almost more important than the actual camera. So if you have good lighting, a cheaper camera can do the trick still. So I'm lucky enough to have two windows in front of me in my office. It's a corner office, and I have two windows, which helps when it's daytime. But right now it's getting dark, so I still need some extra lighting. So I have a stand-up light in that corner over there, and then there's the light on top of me. So yeah, you need good lighting. Don't put it behind you, because then the camera will try to focus on something behind you. So that's important. And then of course the audio needs to be decent as well, because people need to hear you as well. So if you have a good microphone, or maybe you have a good microphone on your computer, then that's fine. I prefer to have the headset, so I really come over crystal clear.
You mentioned Denise, and Denise Wakeman, I've actually followed her and known her for many, many years as well, probably back to 2005, and I definitely encourage people to take a look at her series. In fact, Adventures in Visibility is what they're called, and so she's been on that journey. And I know that she also was somebody who didn't necessarily want to always be on camera. And what were the things, how did you overcome that? Because it's one thing talking about technology, but another one is about, and you probably know this with your clients and who you coach as well, around actually having the confidence about being out in front of a camera. I mean, I've got no interest in being a TV star, but as you and I were talking and preparing for the show, I think you've been told by somebody, it's like, wow, Sarah, now you've got your own TV show.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it to me, and that's not what I intended ever. I don't usually like to be in the middle of things, so public speaking is not my thing. But I think that the audience who can see your style and obviously I'm not as outgoing or extroverted as some of these other show hosts, but I don't need to be. There will be people who like my more calm and casual style, and so I think that's what made me realize I don't need to try to copy anybody else. I'm, my own version, and the people who are already in my audience, they will like me because they already like my newsletters and my blogs, and maybe there will be other people who like my style, and I think that's what it's all about. And don't try to be perfect or try to copy anybody else's style. You're not going to be successful with that.
So Sarah, tell me then what you did in terms of building your confidence and capability in terms of the first shows. Did you do much practicing on your own, or did you buddy up with someone? What would you suggest people do?
I think I would actually recommend people practice a bit more than I did. Like I told you, I just decided I need to announce this now, otherwise I'll never do it. So I probably announced it a bit too early and didn't do enough practicing with other people. And so when I announced the series, the first one I actually did by myself. It was just me. I still have this kind of webinar thing in my head. And I realized, well, that's kind of boring. People don't just want to, watch me the whole time. And that was probably one of the learning points. Hangouts are really much more interesting if you have two people on the show, not just one. And so in terms of practicing, yes, do practice definitely with other people. And if you're going to host a hangout with several people, so with a whole group, underneath in the film strip, also make sure that you practice with all of them as well. Just because you are confident as the host, it can still create problems if your guests are not confident yet or not at ease with the Hangout technology.
So one of the things I've done in terms of this series is the people I'm actually showcasing are what I call Hangout Pioneers, because they've all been using Hangouts either for a few months, or in fact our next guest has been using Hangouts for 18 months. What did you do, and what do you encourage people to do if they're bringing people on who perhaps haven't ever done Hangouts? What is the kind of things that you've done to prepare your guests for the shows? Because I know that you had that in some of your shows.
Yeah, actually, Ronnie Binzer, so that's really my go-to guy in terms of Hangouts, and he has created a great video for Hangout guests. And that's what I've done. I just grabbed that video from his YouTube channel and sent it to all my guests, and then said, it's always a bit, you have to really kind of feel whether it's okay for them or to ask your guest to watch that video, or if they're maybe more advanced than you, then obviously you're not going to say, please watch this video for some tips. But I think it's helped me for a couple of the guests. Some guests are going to be so busy that they don't have time to watch the instructions. That's what happened on one of the shows. But look up that video from Ronnie Binzer. That's really been helpful to me.
Yes, certainly if you're actually looking at getting education around Hangouts, Ronnie does a terrific job, and lots of free content he has available as well. So do check out his YouTube channel as well. Tell us about what you found to be a secret for your kind of putting together a series, and perhaps you're thinking about doing future series. What have you considered as you put that group of programs together? Because it was what I quite liked about what you've just experimented with was it wasn't just one show. There was a plan, and it was all communicated up front, and I think a lot of us can learn from that as well.
I definitely think the success in Hangouts is the continuation, the regularity of the shows. Just by doing one show, you don't get the same. You can probably not promote it as much as you could if you do it on a regular basis. So definitely for me in 2014, that's my plan, to kind of do it on a regular basis and then be able to, promote it on my blog, just like you did for the Hangout Pioneers.
Yes, so in fact, that's one thing, and I think you said it feels like you're a one-person TV station with everything that you had to do, but even with the fact that we did decide to do this series in pretty short notice, I took the time to put together a new cover image for my Google Plus profile. I did an event image that I could use up with a new series of where you can actually schedule your events, or schedule your Hangouts, I should say. I didn't do a YouTube video as a trailer. I know that you've done that. I created a new cover image for Facebook. I did an image for my Google Plus business page. I'm trying to think. I've shared it over on Twitter. And also on Pinterest. And as you mentioned, I also wrote a blog post about it as well. And to some extent, I didn't necessarily want thousands of people here. I want thousands of people to know about you, Sarah, but I didn't necessarily want thousands of people for my first show. You know, it's so easy in comparison to being a guest. And I've been a guest many times on Hangouts, and I use Hangouts privately in terms of with clients. But to do a live show, it definitely feels like you're upping it up a notch or pushing it up a notch. And therefore, you know, I think because I've, you know, certain things that I hope for in terms of production quality and standards, be it the lighting and the audio and all of those things and the graphics that go with it, you know, there is a bit more work getting in place. But of course, once you've got, if you're doing a series, once you've got some templates and you've got a process and you've got a workflow, I think having a workflow, that's one of the things I'm building up as I've going through this process myself, is actually having a workflow to try to streamline some of the process. And of course, if you're a big company, then you've got other people you can rely on. But if you're a small business like yourself and myself, then it's a bit more work, isn't it?
Yeah, I think what's important in that workflow, and where I didn't really get to yet, because it was like you, I just put that up such a short notice, and I just wanted to be ready for 2014, that I've practiced, did this learn and play series. But a lot of the stuff actually comes after the show is done. And I felt like after the show, I was like, whew, you know, I've done it. It's on YouTube now. But there's so much that you can actually do with this YouTube video after the fact. And there's a great post out there by Jimmy Lanley that she wrote about 25 things that you can do after the Google Hangout is over. And I just keep going back now to that post of hers, because there's so many things you can do with that YouTube video. And I think a lot, like you mentioned before, there might be not many people watching live now, but there's going to be a ton of people watching the YouTube video. Unfortunately, you can't change anything anymore. It's all out there. But you know, there's a huge potential in that YouTube video.
Well, you could download it. So that's one thing I'd consider doing. You could download it, and you could do some editing. Obviously, there's a minor amount of editing that you can do on YouTube, but you could certainly then put it into smaller segments. So one of the thoughts I've got is perhaps there might be pieces of the shows that I do that might be really worthwhile bringing into other content, such as over onto Pinterest or over onto SlideShare or over onto my main business YouTube channel. So I created a new YouTube channel to connect to my personal profile, knowing that people want to be connected to me, not necessarily my business page, and that's why I'm doing this as a new series here. So you could do that. The downside would be if you did have hundreds of even 50 or 20 views live, is that if you do take it off YouTube in terms of that live stream originally, then the challenge is then you don't get those views again. You're not able to see those views. But that's certainly one thing to consider if you actually want to put some editing either end of it. I know some people do that, where they take it down and they put some other content around their video as well. So
yeah, that's true.
Tell me then, in terms of the kind of people that you work with, and the kind of, I know you work with many people, not just you know, at your home, but also internationally. What kinds of business do you think you're going to be also encouraging in terms of your clients to explore in terms of using Google Hangouts in the year ahead?
I work mainly with small businesses, and small businesses or solopreneurs, and I think there's a potential for any type of those businesses. So there's so many things that can be done by those Google Hangouts. You mentioned the private Hangouts. Those are going to be great for my clients who are coaches. So they can do group coaching. They can do paid workshops. That's a new option that just became available via the YouTube live stream. So you can now have Google Hangouts that you make private, and people would then pay for them, and so it's not a publicly viewable video. So that's for my coaching clients, or just any other small business who's into training and coaching. And then small businesses in general, to educate your audience, to do Q&A session once a month, just to get in front of their audience and make this face-to-face connection. I think that's very, very powerful.
So Sarah, you mentioned before about the things I'd done to promote this particular event. Tell me the things that you found have worked well for you in terms of promoting, and what you might do differently for your next series that you do in 2014.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the challenges I had is that a large part of my audience is not yet on Google+. In Europe, especially in Switzerland and the kind of southern countries, people they don't even know about Google+ yet, so they don't have a profile. So I was facing that issue that even though I promote it on Google+, they might not be able to watch it. So what I did is that I had to kind of look at it from a point of view of a non-Google+ user. And so that's why I created that trailer, that video that was viewable on my website. And so I told them, if you're not on Google+ yet, don't worry about it. You can view the video right here, just like you would view a webinar. And so what I did is I embedded the Hangout code into that web page. So that was part of the promotion that was happening, to my list on LinkedIn, because I knew a lot of the people in my audience are not on Google+ yet. And then, of course, I promoted it on Google+ to public and communities and so on.
So in terms of after the Hangout, you mentioned the blog post about 25 actions that you could take after hosting a Hangout. And that's a great resource that we can refer people back to. But what were the things that you personally did that you found worked, and what the reaction was that you got from people? I mean, obviously one reaction is me saying, hey Sarah, I think that's brilliant, come and be on this show.
That was a great reaction, I like that. Yeah, I think, like I mentioned before, there's so many things you can do with this YouTube video, and again, it's not necessarily for people who are on Google+, because they don't need to be on Google+. They can view the YouTube video if they don't have a Google+ profile. So of course I refer to my YouTube video in my newsletter, on Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., etc. I wrote up that blog post where I embedded all the YouTube videos again, so people can go over them one more time. And yeah, so a lot of it is after the fact. Also, what I am planning to do is I'm planning to transcribe one of the YouTube videos, so have a transcription and then turn it into an ebook that I'm going to make available on Amazon. So that's another.
That's a terrific idea in terms of repurposing your content as well, and I definitely encourage people to go back to that blog post on your site in terms of there's some really good tips, and I have to say you came across really well in terms of, I know that you were probably a little bit apprehensive and nervous about your first series, but once you get over that piece in terms of the setup, although there is a lot to think about if you're producing it as well. And I think that's where probably having somebody alongside you as a person to be a hangout manager, as you might call them, to manage all of those other things would be really helpful, because I think I definitely would want to have that going forward, to be able to manage any comments. So I know, for example, there's a facility within the Hangout around having comments that can be tracked if people do leave comments, and I can't get that to work for some reason today. So having another person to actually check that out, because if you are watching this, guys, I promise to come back and look at your comments and respond to them, but I apologize that I can't do that in real time here. And for example, if people were sharing things or comments over on Twitter, if you're the host of a show, it's a little easier if you're doing a webinar, because you can have your eyes down and go off and look at something else and put yourself on mute. I think that's more difficult with the Hangout. And one of the things I'm certainly aware of is that, yes, you could turn this so you don't see me, but I think in terms of, as I'm the host, I think fine, see my slides or see me, but you don't necessarily want to see me with my head down, or just having my image there, my avatar there. I think as the host, the more that you can be there, because you don't see that if you're watching a breakfast TV show in terms of a news. Yeah, they might be there with their iPads and looking at what's coming up next and their auto cues, but they don't walk off and look for other information. They've got somebody in their ears, kind of giving them, oh, go and have a look at that. And I think there's something to be said for what we can learn from traditional media in terms of when you're hosting this kind of show. I don't know if you agree, Sarah.
Totally, yeah, no. I think people expect to see the host on a Hangout. And so if you're coming from the webinar field and you have an experience in that, you really need to consider that this is a different kind of format. And if you just want to go over and do a webinar in a Google Hangout, people might not appreciate it, that you're just sharing your screen and not showing your face at all. I think that would be considered probably rude.
Yeah, and I'm very conscious of that today, because I think also that it's the interaction. So, we could just do this and not make it a live event, and we could have a video interview and we could then put it up onto YouTube. But because we've said this is a live event, then it allows people to leave comments in terms of look for that interaction. But I think to do that, I've definitely got the feeling I need to have somebody with me. So if there's anybody out there who wants to have some experience of what it's like in terms of being a Hangout manager, let me know. I'm sure Sarah would be also equally interested in learning if there's anybody out there who wants to work with her. Isn't that, Sarah? We're happy to give them experience of what we're going through here.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so Sarah, let's look at some final thoughts then. There's a couple of questions I have for us as we wrap up, and I've wanted to keep the show to be around 30 minutes. 2 or 3 learnings. I know people can read their blog post, and I thought it was excellent, and you've got all your content there and some of the things. But what are the 2 or 3 big things that have really stood out for you as you've gone through this Learn and Play series, and that will stand you in good stead for next year?
Okay, as I said before, the first thing you need to consider when you do a Hangout with other people, just because you figured out that the Hangout technology does not mean that your guests are equally at ease with the Hangout technology. So even if they're doing podcasts or webinars, Hangouts are a completely different thing. So I always advise to kind of test with them first, also test their bandwidth. One of the in the blog post, one of the issues was that I was on a Hangout with my friend Joe Sanders in Australia, and it seems that Australia at certain times in the day the bandwidth is just not big enough. I don't know if it's a general thing in Australia or if it was just her bandwidth, but anyway, the connection was just broken the minute I went live. And so that was tough, because I planned a Q&A just like we are doing right now with Krishna, and so I was asking the questions and answering them at the same time. So yeah, check with newbies first, test with them, tell them about the lightning and all that. What else? Yeah, the lightning is important, so make sure you have light in front of you, not in the back. And then have a plan B. So just because you've planned for a Q&A, that doesn't mean that it's going to be a Q&A. You just don't know what's happening on the other end. So if you, all of a sudden the connection goes, you need to be able to say the show goes on, and you just come up with ideas, or I recommend that you have some kind of notes on the side. I have 2 monitors, for example. So I have a separate monitor where I know that I'm not going to share on screen, and there I can have some bullet point notes that will help me along with things that I want to say. And for example, one could be the Plan B sheet. What if the person doesn't show up, and you still have to go live because you promised, and people are expecting you live. So if the person doesn't show up, they got stuck in traffic, well, you still need to go live and host the show. So always have a plan B. I think that's important.
And I would say that the fact that you have done podcasts, teleseminars, and webinars, if you've got that kind of experience, it does stand you in great stead for doing this. So you don't throw everything out, because you know about how to interview other people, you know about how to manage your show. So there's a lot of skills that you can bring with you. It is a little bit about actually getting comfortable with being in front of a camera, and then also managing some of the technology. And of course, you could get help, as I mentioned before, in terms of having somebody who manage some of the technical aspects of a show for you. So I think, Sarah, it actually did show in your series the fact that you've got lots of experience such as that. Let's just look at 2014 and what your series has actually taught you, and what's it encouraging you to think about in terms of next year. And I know one of the things that you're looking at doing is actually operating your events a little differently, where people will register to attend your event. So perhaps you can tell us about your thinking behind that, and because obviously this first series people could just come along and watch, they didn't have to give their name and email address, but I know they're obviously looking at building other things into your business model. So tell us about the kind of things you've got planned for 2014.
Yes, so to go back to November, that's where the idea first came, and I definitely wanted to have the webinars on Google Hangouts. Now, as you probably all know, on webinars you register with your name and email. And so I still want that for some of the Google Hangouts that I'll be running. And I'm using a third-party tool, which is called Lead Pages for that. So Lead Pages will I'll build a page on my site, and then have people register for the Google Hangout. They will get the link, and that's how they view the Hangout. So that's the free shows, basically, where people just sign up with email and name. Then I will also be hosting workshops. So this is more, in-depth content, probably 1 hour and a half shows where people actually pay a workshop fee. And that I can also now run through Google Hangouts via the YouTube live stream. So where you can make sure that it's a private event, and only people who have paid for it get to view the event. So these are the two things that I'll be doing in terms of building my email list and making some running a side income stream. I also think that the fact that just anybody can watch it is a good thing, and so I'll definitely continue some kind of show where it's just a monthly Q&A or a weekly. I haven't decided yet, but some kind of face-to-face connection with my audience where I choose a topic and invite some guests, and there's no registration and there's no fee. I think that's important to have that as part of your strategy as well.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing with us a little bit of an insider view of what you're looking at. I think that sounds fantastic, that you're going to do some free-to-access shows, but of course integrate some of the things into your business model, be that supporting you building your list, and Lead Pages is definitely a great platform. There are other plugins if you're working with WordPress, as well as sites that people are doing and other standalone software that you could invest in. And equally in terms of looking at how you use that with your private YouTube videos that you'll be able to post as well. So it sounds as though a few more people are going to be moving over to those kind of tools, and perhaps we'll see fewer webinars in some of the other platforms. I'm sure those companies will continue to evolve. I know that I still use my webinar platform for some programs. I haven't necessarily made the decision to switch everything over onto YouTube, and it's also, I think, useful to have a backup service as well, as I know I was even having problems with even getting this program scheduled as well. Sarah, just as we wrap up, then perhaps you can let people know how best to get in contact with you. I know you're in many places on the web. Perhaps you want to tell people how they can do so, and then we'll come on to the end of today's show.
Yeah, I'd like to mention my website again, simplicityadmins.ch or .com. Both ways lead you there. Look me up on Google+, Sarah Santacroce, C-R-O-C-E, and I'm also on LinkedIn, but those are the two good places to find me.
And do check out Sarah's blog. I know she's done a couple of really interesting challenges, I think, haven't you, this year, Sarah, around LinkedIn. So that's one of the tools that you teach people to use, and you've had a LinkedIn challenge where you've been encouraging people improve their visibility on LinkedIn.
That's right. Yeah, I run a challenge, LinkedIn challenge twice per year, where I gather a bunch of experts from all over the world, and we share LinkedIn tips with the audience. So that unfortunately just finished, but if you go to LinkedIn challenge, you can still get in and get the free ebook to download.
So thank you so much, Sarah, for being with us here today and being my first guest on this show. I'm just leaving a question with our community here who's watching either now or in the future. And what will be your next steps? You've had some really useful, valuable tips here from Sarah. I wonder if she's inspired you and this show has inspired you to explore watching some Hangouts. I think that's a great place to start. And if you're on Google+, then go over to the area where it's got Hangouts that are going on. You can watch them there and come across them, because I think you can learn a huge amount and perhaps think about your own shows from doing that. And maybe at some stage then look at opportunities to be a guest. As I said, I've been a guest, and being a guest is so much simpler.
It is. I confirm.
I know Sarah and I are happy to be guests on other people's shows because it takes away some of the other things we have to do. But of course, then I want to also encourage you to think about how you might use Hangouts in your business, and that, specifically I'm looking at it from a marketing communications perspective, but of course it could be used for many other things as well, and that's what you might think about in terms of employee engagement, employee communications, which is another one of my passions. So my whole series here of part of my little mini series of Hangout Pioneers is really to encourage you to start to think about using Hangouts in your business. I know that Google Plus is not necessarily being adopted as widely as many people might think it is being in other countries. Certainly here in Ireland, I do see terrific engagement. It's not necessarily the right place for everybody, but I do think the ability to be able to do live video conversations, shows, as we were talking about here today, is something that definitely is worth considering. And that's my inspiration. That's really why I wanted to start this show, because I want to bring you examples of what other people are doing to get us to think about doing things a little differently as part of our visual content marketing. And just as we wrap up, in terms of letting you know about our next show, it's actually going to be on Tuesday, the 7th of January. I'm thrilled that Sarah was able to join us, so I could at least say I've done one show in 2013. My next guest is Rich Kelin. And I've known Rich for many, many years, probably going back to about 2007. We actually met originally through teleseminar forums, and he's an authority in crisis communications. He's been running a show for 18 months on crisis comms, and so I thought it would be useful to get his insights. So again, slightly different businesses. Rich is based in the US on that particular sector. Sarah's actually in Switzerland, and she's looking at it from an angle of communications with people in terms of coaching and small businesses. And so if you do have thoughts about who you'd like to see on the show, I've got another couple of people already lined up for later on this month as part of this mini-series. I'd love to hear from you. But with that, thank you so much for joining us here, either today in terms of live, and I'll be coming back and looking at any comments that you left, or in fact in terms of the future. Let me know. Use the hashtag in terms of Hangout Pioneers. Get in contact with me on Google Plus or anywhere else in terms of you can find me. I'd love to know if you decide to start up a show as a result of being here with us through the Hangout Pioneers. Thanks again, Sarah, for being a terrific first guest. I wish you every success in 2014, and I look forward to hearing about your shows as well.
Thank you, Krishna. Thanks so much for having me, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.